Most people run from solitude because they've been conditioned to believe that being alone is the same as being lonely. They fill their calendars with noise, their homes with constant chatter, and their minds with endless distraction because the silence feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth: solitude is the school of self-mastery. It's the place where you truly meet yourself without the masks you wear for the world, without the need to perform or please, without the constant input of other people's opinions. Alone, you begin to hear the voice of your own heart. Alone, you start to see the patterns of your own thinking. Alone, you uncover the raw, unpolished truth of who you are, and that truth is the foundation for the person you're meant to become. When you step into solitude with courage instead of fear, something extraordinary happens. You start to notice the thoughts you've been ignoring. The worries, the dreams, the regrets, the hopes, they all come to the surface. And in those moments, you can either run from them or face them head on. The brave choose to face them. They grab a journal, they sit in the discomfort, and they begin the process of understanding themselves. Because you cannot master what you do not understand. And you cannot understand what you keep avoiding. In solitude, there's nowhere to hide from yourself, and that is the greatest gift you will ever receive. Think of the world's greatest performers, leaders, thinkers, and creators. They all had a practice of pulling away from the crowd to sharpen their craft and deepen their clarity. It wasn't because they didn't like people. It was because they understood that self-mastery is forged in the furnace of aloneness. When you're alone, you have the space to refine your thoughts, to strengthen your beliefs, to build a deep well of self-trust. And self-trust is what allows you to step boldly into the arena of life without constantly seeking permission or validation. It's tempting to think that you'll work on yourself later, when life gets quieter, but that is a lie the world tells you to keep you in the rush of the crowd. The truth is, your growth demands that you create solitude now. Block it out in your calendar the way you would an important meeting. And when you sit there, resist the urge to scroll or distract yourself. Instead, ask questions that pierce to the core. What do I truly want? What am I tolerating that I shouldn't be? Who am I when no one's watching? And then listen. The answers may not come immediately, but in the stillness, they always arrive. At first, it will feel uncomfortable, because solitude strips away the illusions you've built. You'll see the habits you've been hiding behind. You'll confront the excuses you've been repeating for years. You'll notice the gap between the life you say you want and the life you're actually living. But if you have the courage to keep showing up for yourself in that space, you will also begin to see your own strength, your resilience, your creativity, and your capacity for change. You'll realize that solitude is not empty, it's full of potential. It's the quiet forge where you become the kind of person who can lead yourself, and by extension, lead others. Over time, solitude becomes less of a place you fear and more of a place you crave. You'll notice that when life gets chaotic, you naturally retreat to it to recharge. You'll see that you make better decisions when you've had time alone to think. You'll discover that your emotional state becomes more grounded because you're not constantly reacting to external noise. And perhaps most importantly, you'll build an unshakable relationship with yourself. You'll learn to trust your instincts, to honor your needs, and to respect your own boundaries. Being alone doesn't mean being cut off from the world. It means being deeply connected to yourself so that you can show up more powerfully in the world. The world will always try to pull you into its noise, but your job is to remember that your power grows in your quiet. Solitude is your private training ground. It's where you strengthen the mental muscles that will carry you through challenges. It's where you plant the seeds of the life you want to grow. And if you treat it as sacred, you will emerge from it with the clarity, courage, and conviction to live your life on your terms. That is self-mastery. And it begins when you stop running from being alone and start embracing it as your greatest teacher. Your greatest ideas are not born in the middle of chaos, in the rush of crowded rooms, or in the endless chatter of other people's opinions. They are born in the still, quiet spaces where your mind is finally free to wander without interruption. The world is loud. Your phone is constantly buzzing. Your email is always filling, and there's always someone or something asking for your attention. But creativity, clarity, and innovation don't thrive in that kind of environment. They require breathing room. They require silence. They require the kind of space where you can hear your own thoughts instead of drowning in everyone else's noise. When you give yourself permission to step into quiet, you're giving your mind the gift of expansion. Most people live in a constant state of mental congestion, so filled with input from the outside world that there's no room for anything original to take root. But in the absence of noise, the mind begins to connect dots it couldn't see before. You start remembering experiences, insights, and conversations that suddenly piece together into something meaningful. This is where the sparks of great ideas happen, when there's nothing competing for your mental energy but the question you've been carrying. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came not when someone was grinding endlessly at their desk, but when they stepped away from the noise. Think of the writer who finally cracked the plot of their novel on a long walk alone, the scientist who connected the missing pieces of their theory while staring out at a still lake, or the entrepreneur who envisioned their next big venture during a quiet morning away from their inbox. Silence creates a mental white space where brilliance has the room to appear, but you have to be willing to create that space intentionally. It's tempting to think that if you just keep doing more, thinking harder, and moving faster, the big idea will arrive. But often, the opposite is true. The breakthrough happens when you stop forcing it, when you sit in a quiet room or take a slow walk, or watch the sunset without feeling the need to fill the air with words or check your phone. In those moments, your brain shifts gears. It moves from the frantic surface-level thinking you live in most of the day to a deeper, more reflective state. And that is where insight lies. But this kind of creative clarity doesn't happen by accident. In a world designed to distract you, you have to fiercely protect your quiet. That might mean waking up an hour before everyone else to write in peace. It might mean taking a solo trip just to think. It might mean putting your phone on airplane mode for an entire afternoon and letting your thoughts stretch out. These small acts of intentional silence are not luxuries. They're necessities if you want to live a life driven by vision instead of by reaction. The beauty of ideas born in quiet is that they're often more aligned with who you really are. When you're surrounded by noise, it's easy to mistake other people's dreams for your own. You hear what everyone else is chasing, and without realizing it, you start chasing it too. But when you're alone with your own thoughts, you can ask yourself, is this what I actually want? Is this the path I truly believe in? That kind of self-honesty is only possible when you strip away the distractions long enough to hear the answers. Over time, you'll begin to see the direct link between your best thinking and your moments of stillness. You'll realize that those flashes of inspiration aren't random. They're the result of giving your mind the space it needs to operate at its highest level. And once you understand that, you'll start treating quiet as part of your work, your growth, and your daily rhythm. You'll stop feeling guilty for stepping back from the noise because you'll see that it's in those moments you're actually moving forward the fastest. So, create that quiet space. Protect it as you would protect anything sacred. Walk into it not with an agenda, but with an openness to whatever might arise. Some days, nothing groundbreaking will happen, and that's okay. But other days, an idea will come that changes everything. And when it does, you'll know it wasn't born out of luck or chance. It was born because you were wise enough to step into silence, to give your mind the oxygen it needs, and to trust that your greatest ideas are waiting for you in the stillness. Emotional independence is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself, and being comfortable alone is where it begins. Most people live in a constant loop of seeking validation, approval, and reassurance from others, often without even realizing it. They feel worthy when someone praises them, confident when someone supports them, and happy when someone gives them attention. But the problem with this way of living is that your inner state is completely dependent on forces outside your control. The moment people withdraw their approval or fail to meet your expectations, you feel lost, empty, or unworthy. Emotional independence is the art of breaking free from that cycle, and solitude is the training ground where you build it. When you can be alone and still feel whole, you have stepped into a different level of strength. You stop relying on constant interaction to feel alive. You stop measuring your value by how many people text you back, invite you to events, or tell you you're doing a good job. Instead, your worth becomes something rooted deep within you, something unshaken by the ebb and flow of other people's opinions. This is not about rejecting people or relationships. It's about making sure that your happiness isn't rented property owned by someone else. You own it, you decide it, and you protect it fiercely. Building emotional independence in solitude starts with self-awareness. When you're constantly surrounded by people, it's easy to lose track of where your emotions actually come from. Are you happy because you genuinely feel aligned with your life, or because someone complimented you? Are you anxious because there's truly a problem, or because you sense someone's disapproval? When you're alone, you begin to untangle those threads. You learn to separate your feelings from other people's reactions. You discover the difference between genuine self-confidence and the temporary high of being liked. This process isn't always comfortable. When you first sit with yourself, you might notice the itch to reach for your phone, to text someone, or to scroll through social media just to feel connected. That's the withdrawal phase of emotional dependency. You've been using constant communication as a way to soothe discomfort, and solitude forces you to face it head on. But if you can resist the urge to escape into distractions, something powerful starts to happen. You realize that you can handle the quiet. You can handle your own company, and slowly that need for outside reassurance begins to loosen its grip. As you grow in emotional independence, you'll find that your relationships actually become stronger, not weaker. When you don't rely on someone to complete you, You can meet them as a whole person instead of as someone looking to be filled. You won't pressure others to constantly affirm you or carry the weight of your happiness. This makes your presence lighter, your conversations more genuine, and your love less conditional. People can feel when you're with them because you want to be, not because you need to be. And that kind of connection is rare and deeply attractive. Another benefit of emotional independence is that you gain the courage to make decisions that truly serve you, even if they're unpopular. If you're dependent on approval, you'll avoid choices that might upset others, even if they're the right ones for your growth. But when you stand on your own emotionally, you're free to follow your convictions without fear of losing your sense of worth. You can take risks, set boundaries, and pursue your goals without needing everyone to cheer for you. That freedom is priceless. The truth is, life will not always give you the support you hope for. There will be seasons where people misunderstand you, where they can't see your vision, or where they're too caught up in their own challenges to give you the encouragement you want. If your happiness depends on them, those seasons will break you. But if you've built your emotional independence, you'll walk through those times with quiet strength. You'll still feel the sting of disappointment, but it won't define you. You'll still value connection, but you won't crumble in its absence. Emotional independence isn't about isolation. It's about liberation. It's the ability to stand tall in a room full of people or in an empty one, knowing that who you are and what you're worth is not up for negotiation. It's the confidence to live in alignment with your values even when nobody is watching. And it's the peace of knowing that no matter what changes in the world around you, you are anchored within yourself. Solitude is where you learn this. It's where you stop outsourcing your happiness and start generating it from within. And once you've built that kind of strength, you become unshakable. Discomfort is the doorway to transformation, and nowhere is that more evident than in the process of learning to be alone. For many people, the idea of spending extended time by themselves feels unsettling, even frightening. The silence can feel heavy. The absence of another person's presence can feel like a void. And in that emptiness, insecurities, fears, and unprocessed emotions start to surface. That's why so many avoid solitude. They confuse that discomfort with danger. But the truth is that very discomfort is a sign that something important is happening. It means you're stepping outside the well-worn grooves of habit, entering the territory where growth becomes possible. When you first choose solitude, your mind will resist. It will try to convince you to pick up your phone, turn on the TV, or reach out to someone just to escape the quiet. It will tell you that being alone is boring, unproductive, or even unsafe. But what it's really trying to do is protect you from facing yourself. Growth requires that you face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. And that's rarely comfortable. The old patterns will cling to you like vines, whispering that you should go back to what's familiar. But if you want to grow, you must be willing to lean into the unknown, to step past the edges of your comfort zone, and to stay there long enough for the change to take root. It's in discomfort that we learn what we're truly capable of. Think about the gym. You don't build muscle by lifting what's easy. You grow by pushing your body into resistance. The same is true for your emotional and mental strength. If you spend your life avoiding solitude because it feels awkward, you deny yourself the chance to develop the inner resilience that comes from moving through that awkwardness. Each time you sit with your own thoughts, instead of running from them, you expand your capacity to handle life's challenges. You become less dependent on external conditions to feel at ease because you've learned to find steadiness within yourself. Transformation doesn't happen in the smooth, predictable moments. It happens in the friction. And solitude creates that friction because it strips away your distractions. When you're alone, you have no one to entertain you, no one to validate you, no one to fill the empty spaces in the conversation. At first, that can feel like loss. But over time, you start to realize it's actually freedom. Freedom from the constant pressure to perform. Freedom from shaping yourself to fit others' expectations. Freedom to be fully and unapologetically you. There's a turning point in this process, a moment when the discomfort starts to shift. At first, you may feel restless, like you're wasting time. But then, slowly, you notice that you're more relaxed in your own company. You start hearing your inner voice more clearly. You start feeling less pressure to fill every silence with action or noise. And then you begin to crave this space because it becomes a source of strength, creativity, and clarity. That's the transformation, the moment when what once felt unbearable becomes invaluable. The truth is, most breakthroughs in life are preceded by a period of discomfort. Starting a new habit feels awkward at first. Breaking a bad one feels even worse. Facing a hard truth can sting. But on the other side of that discomfort lies growth, healing, and a deeper connection to yourself. Solitude magnifies this truth because it confronts you with the reality that you are enough, even without constant input from the world. The first time you feel that truth in your bones, the fear of being alone begins to fade. If you want to transform, you have to make friends with discomfort. You have to see it not as a threat, but as a sign that you're on the right path. Each time you resist the urge to escape it, you're building a stronger, more grounded version of yourself. You're expanding your ability to stay calm in uncertainty, to think clearly under pressure, and to find peace without needing perfect conditions. And over time, the very thing you once avoided, being alone, becomes a trusted ally on your journey to becoming the person you were meant to be. That is the gift of leaning into discomfort. It doesn't just change your relationship with solitude, it changes your relationship with life. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you change the way you show up in every relationship you have. Most people don't realize that the health of their relationships is directly tied to the relationship they have with themselves. If you enter connections feeling incomplete, hoping someone else will fill the emptiness inside you, you inevitably put pressure on that relationship to give you what you haven't given yourself. That pressure can lead to disappointment, frustration, and even resentment, because no other person can consistently provide you with the sense of wholeness you crave. But when you become comfortable in solitude, you enter relationships as a complete person, bringing fullness instead of taking it. This shift not only improves your own well-being, but also elevates the quality of your connections. Being at peace with yourself means you know who you are, what you value, and what you need to thrive. You're not constantly seeking someone else's approval to feel secure. You're not molding yourself into someone you think they want you to be. Instead, you can be authentic because you've already accepted and appreciated your own uniqueness in the quiet moments you've spent alone. People can sense when you're being genuine, and it makes your presence magnetic. They're drawn to you because you bring stability, confidence, and self-assurance into the space you share with them. This self-connection also sharpens your ability to set healthy boundaries. When you spend time alone, you learn to listen to your own needs without judgment. You know when you're emotionally drained, when you need rest, and when you need space. And because you've practiced honoring those needs in solitude, you're more likely to honor them in relationships too. That means you can say no when necessary without feeling guilt, and you can communicate your needs clearly instead of expecting others to guess them. Boundaries like this don't push people away. They create a foundation of respect and trust. Another powerful effect of enjoying your own company is that you stop looking to others to fix your moods. You understand that your emotional well-being is your responsibility, not your partner's, your friends, or your family's. That doesn't mean you stop leaning on people in times of need, but it does mean you don't depend on them for your everyday sense of happiness. You become a source of stability instead of a drain. This makes you a better partner, a better friend, a better colleague, because you're adding to the relationship rather than constantly needing to be refilled. When you love your own company, you also stop tolerating relationships that don't serve you. You're no longer afraid of being alone, so you don't cling to people out of fear of solitude. You won't settle for connections that drain your energy, disrespect your values, or limit your growth. You can walk away when necessary, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. This is one of the most freeing aspects of self-connection. You get to choose relationships out of desire, not desperation. It's important to understand that being comfortable alone doesn't make you anti-social or detached. In fact, it often makes you more present and engaged in relationships because you're no longer carrying the weight of unmet personal needs. You can truly listen to others without filtering everything through your own insecurities. You can celebrate their wins without feeling threatened, and you can support them through struggles without losing yourself in the process. Your connections become richer because they're built on mutual respect and authenticity, not hidden expectations. Over time, this way of being transforms how others experience you. People will notice that you're calm under pressure, that you don't react impulsively to every mood shift in the room, and that you bring a grounded energy to your interactions. This stability is rare in a world where so many are seeking constant reassurance. You become someone others can lean on, not because you've made yourself into their emotional crutch, but because you have built such a strong foundation within yourself that you can offer genuine support without losing balance. Ultimately, enjoying your own company doesn't just change your life. It changes the lives of everyone you interact with. You show people that it's possible to be whole and happy on your own, which inspires them to seek that same wholeness in themselves. You bring a sense of ease into relationships, creating spaces where connection can thrive without fear or neediness. And the more you nurture that relationship with yourself, the more you elevate every other connection you have. In this way, solitude becomes a gift you give not just to yourself, but to every person who has the privilege of knowing you. Alone time is not a luxury. It is a necessity if you want to live a life of clarity, focus, and deep fulfillment. In a world that constantly demands your attention, guarding your inner sanctuary becomes an act of self-preservation. This sanctuary is not a physical place, though it can be. It is a mental and emotional space that you protect from noise, chaos, and negativity. It is the place where you go to recharge, to realign with your purpose, and to reconnect with your deepest values. Without this sanctuary, you risk being pulled in 1,000 directions by the demands of others, losing sight of who you are and what truly matters to you. Most people don't guard this inner space because they underestimate its importance. They think they can handle the constant barrage of messages, notifications, and conversations without consequence. But the truth is, every interaction you have leaves an imprint on your mental and emotional state. If you're not careful about what you let in, your mind becomes cluttered, your energy becomes scattered, and your ability to make clear decisions is compromised. Guarding your inner sanctuary means being intentional about what and who you allow into your mental space. It's about knowing that your peace is worth protecting, even if that means disappointing others sometimes. One of the first steps to guarding this sanctuary is to identify what disrupts it. Maybe it's certain people whose negativity drains you. Maybe it's social media, which fills your mind with comparison and noise. Maybe it's your own habit of overcommitting and saying yes to everything. Once you identify these intrusions, you can start setting boundaries to limit their access. This isn't about shutting the world out completely. It's about being selective with what you allow in, just as you would be selective about who enters your home. Creating time for solitude is one of the most effective ways to reinforce your sanctuary. This means scheduling quiet moments into your day as deliberately as you would schedule a meeting. It could be as simple as taking a walk without your phone, sitting in silence with a cup of tea, or spending a few minutes journaling each morning. These moments are not wasted time. They are investments in your mental clarity and emotional resilience. They give you the space to process your thoughts, release stress, and return to your life with renewed focus. Guarding your inner sanctuary also means learning how to say no without guilt. Every yes you give to something unimportant is a no to something that truly matters. If you allow every demand to claim a piece of your attention, soon you'll have nothing left for yourself. Saying no is not selfish. It is self-respect. It communicates to yourself and to others that your time, energy, and peace are valuable. People who respect you will understand this, and those who don't will reveal themselves by how they respond to your boundaries. The more you protect your sanctuary, the more you'll notice the quality of your life improving. You'll start thinking more clearly because your mind is no longer flooded with constant noise. You'll make better decisions because you have the space to reflect instead of reacting impulsively. You'll feel more grounded because you're not being tossed around by the chaos of the outside world. And perhaps most importantly, you'll develop a deeper connection with yourself because you've made space for that relationship to grow. There will always be pressure to let your guard down. The world will tell you that you're missing out if you're not constantly plugged in, responding, and available. But the truth is, the real loss happens when you're so busy being available to everyone else that you're unavailable to yourself. Your sanctuary is the one place where you can hear your own voice clearly, where you can remember your dreams, and where you can access the strength you need to move forward with intention. Without it, you risk living a life that is reactive instead of purposeful. Guarding your inner sanctuary is not something you do once. It's a daily practice. Some days you'll be better at it than others, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back to it, keep choosing to protect your peace, and keep reminding yourself that you are worth the effort. Over time, it will become second nature to pause before letting something into your mental space, to check whether it aligns with your values and your vision. And when you live from that place of clarity and protection, you'll find that the world's noise loses its power over you. You'll move through life with more calm, more focus, and more joy, because you have learned the art of keeping your sanctuary sacred. True fulfillment comes when you stop measuring your worth against the lives of others and start embracing your own unique path. Comparison is one of the greatest thieves of joy, and in solitude you're given the perfect opportunity to break free from its grip. When you are constantly surrounded by people, whether physically or through the endless scroll of social media, it's almost impossible not to compare yourself, your progress, your appearance, your success to theirs. But when you intentionally spend time alone without the noise of other people's stories, you can finally hear your own. This is where you start building a life that's authentic to you, not a reflection of what the world tells you it should be. When you stop comparing, you create space for self-appreciation. You begin to see the beauty in your own journey, the lessons you've learned, the obstacles you've overcome, and the unique strengths you bring to the table. You stop chasing someone else's definition of success and start creating your own. You realize that your timeline doesn't need to match anyone else's because your life is not a race, it's an individual journey. This mindset brings a deep sense of peace because you're no longer rushing to keep up with standards that were never meant for you in the first place. Being alone allows you to tune into your own values instead of absorbing everyone else's. In the quiet, you have time to reflect on what truly matters to you, not what you've been told should matter. Maybe success for you isn't about wealth or recognition. Maybe it's about freedom, meaningful relationships, or creative expression. Or maybe it's a mix of those things entirely on your terms. This clarity is only possible when you strip away the constant influence of outside voices. When you stand in this clarity, your choices become more intentional, and your life begins to align with your true self instead of a borrowed version of happiness. One of the most liberating aspects of embracing your own journey is the confidence it builds. When you no longer need external validation to feel worthy, you start living with a sense of inner freedom that few experience. You take risks that align with your vision, even if they look strange to others. You make decisions based on what feels right for you, not what will impress or please the crowd. And this confidence isn't loud or boastful. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable because it's rooted in self-trust. This doesn't mean you ignore the world or shut yourself off from learning from others. It simply means you filter everything through the lens of your own values and goals. You can admire someone else's path without feeling the need to replicate it. You can celebrate their wins without feeling diminished in your own progress. This shift is powerful because it removes the sense of competition that poisons so many relationships. Instead of feeling threatened by someone else's success, you can be genuinely happy for them while staying fully committed to your own. Over time, living without comparison changes the way you experience life. You start noticing the small victories that once went overlooked. You feel gratitude for your progress even when it's slow because you understand that every step forward, no matter how small, is still progress. You become more present, more engaged in your own life, because you're not constantly measuring it against a moving target set by others. And ironically, when you stop obsessing over where you stand in relation to others, you often end up moving faster toward your goals because your energy is no longer wasted on self-doubt. Solitude is the soil where this mindset grows. It's where you can unplug from the endless stream of comparisons, expectations, and opinions and return to the simplicity of your own truth. In that space, you realize that your worth has never been dependent on your position in some invisible ranking. It has always been intrinsic. You are valuable not because of what you've achieved in comparison to others, but because of who you are as you are in this very moment. Embracing your own journey takes courage, because it means letting go of the safety of the crowd and walking your own path. But once you experience the freedom it brings, you'll never want to go back. You'll move through life with a quiet confidence, knowing that you're building something real, something that belongs entirely to you, and that in the end is far more rewarding than any prize comparison could ever offer.